started. There's still more food, so feel free to get some more. I'm the past chair of the Little Bear Forest Reform Coalition, and I've been the chair of the Little Bear Forest Reform Coalition for 2 years. Our bylaws actually state that you're only supposed to be a chair for 1 year, but since we were just getting going, I had the honor to help run the organization for 2 years. But now it's time to pass the baton, and so I'm really pleased to be able to pass that baton to our previous vice chair and board member who's been involved for at least a year, and just a real dynamo, and we'll continue. I'm going to stay on the board as past chair, and obviously a very active board member. And I'm going to pass that baton over to Mary Ann West, and she's going to run the rest of the show tonight. Thanks.
Thanks, Mary Ann. First, I want to thank Glenn Crawford and Dreamcatchers for catering such a marvelous spread of food for all of us to enjoy tonight.
Yes.
I want to take a minute to talk about Mary Weaver for a second. She's really a little bit of an inspiration to me. She doesn't have the, I'm not even going to say the word, but I think huevos in Spanish is one of the words that I have, and sometimes it gets me in a lot of trouble. She sort of is a great balance for me, and I'm actually extremely thrilled that she's still going to be past chair. I'm hoping she'll continue in the position of our policy person so that we can continue to develop more policy within our organization, and I have big shoes to fill here. But I know that we have an incredible board. We have a couple of new board members. We have Coda Omnes, who has just sort of put a whole lot of this together, a lot of our conference, and she is here at ENMU. And who is her? We don't have a new other than Coda. Okay, well, we have renewed. There are other people who have been renewed. So we still have our real core bunch, and now we have Coda as an addition. I'm just going to take a second to tell you some of the things that I hope to accomplish in the next year. And one of them is to continue working with all of the entities that we've been so blessed to work with, from the federal level, state, county, village, on and on. We've been so enlightened by their expertise and their professionalism that it always makes us look good, and I'm all for that as much as I can give of that. I'd like to engage the youth of this community. Somehow I would like to get the youth involved in forest health. I know we have eco-servants. I'm going to tap into them, and I know that there's just a lot of kids during the summer that would love to do something in the forest, and so I'm going to see about that. I want to enlarge our membership, so I'm going to appeal to all of you. Please get a membership in Little Bear Forest Reform Coalition. It's $25 a year. We will continue making these series of speakers available at free of charge. But let me tell you that $25 can certainly help us in a lot of ways. We're working on grants. We're waiting right now for an answer from P&M. We have to apply for a grant to buy a message board that will go at the Chamber of Commerce. So, and we give P&M credit for that too, because the grant's coming through. We're also going to be working on a Hubbard grant. We have some ideas that we're kicking around. I think they'll come to more concrete ideas when we have our board meeting next week. So just at this time, I'd like to have Rick Merrick stand up for a minute. He has an announcement to make about firewood that's available on Bonita Road. Thanks, Rick.
I think you just did it.
Okay. There you go, Rick. How about that? Took the words right out of your mouth. So the project is finished on Bonita Road. If you need firewood for the winter, or if you know anybody who needs firewood, please tell them that it's all available right now.
Just follow up on that. Make sure you stop by the Smoky Bear District and get a permit.
Get a permit.
We don't want you to get in trouble driving off of there.
And Ranger Dave Warnack will get you, so you got to watch out. That's right. Thank you, Rick.
Thank you.
At this time, we have been so blessed to have a woman who has sort of helped us along the way, every bit of the way, and continues to do so. She has really put this entire series together herself. At this time, I'd like to introduce you to Laura Doff.
And welcome. said, in Lincoln and Otero counties. And we do a lot of different projects. We partner with the Forest Service, State Forestry, BLM, New Mexico Land Office, anybody who's got projects going on, we work with them to try and do cost share programs for property owners. We do economic development type things, so we do lots and lots of different things. One of the groups that we work with very closely is our soil water conservation districts. And tonight we were talking back a while ago on some of the issues that we face post-fire, and not necessarily even post-fire, but just in an arid environment. When we get our heavy monsoonal rains, erosion is a big issue for us. What we're going to do when we have flood issues, those types of things. So this is where we really decided that educating people about what a watershed is, why it's important to you, and how we can conserve it, how we can make it healthier, and therefore hopefully increase the quality and maybe even the quantity of the water that we all have to share around here. We actually have two speakers tonight, or two sets of speakers. And first up, we're going to have John Hartung and Leslie Tiley. John is or will be within 5 days, our area range conservationist, which means he gets to work within our area as well as Otero County. He's based in Otero County. He works with NRCS, which is Natural Resource Conservation Service. And Leslie is with the Otero Soil Water Conservation District. That is a group that is very, very active in Otero County. The Sacramento Mountains faces over there the same issues that we face over here in the Lincoln District. So they're gonna, when I asked John, I said, what's the name of your not proposal, but your presentation? He said, where the hell's my dirt? So that's what John's gonna tell us about, is where your dirt is and how you can keep it on your property.
Thank you for having us tonight. Like she said, Leslie Tiley's with the Otero Soil and Water Conservation District, and I'm John Hartung, and I'm with the Natural Resources Conservation Service, which is part of the USDA. And what our conservation district down in Alamogordo, which oversees Otero County, what they've done is in the years past, I don't know if anybody's heard of the hydrogeology study. Hydrogeology is the study of water and where does it come from. And what they were looking for down there is, what's the recharge? You know, we're in a terrible drought, and wells are starting to go dry, and the precipitation we get, you know, a lot of precipitation recently comes in the summer months, and we kind of forget about the winter months and the snow that we've had, and which one influences the groundwater more? Is it the winter moisture, or is it the summer moisture? And that hydrology study was used to look at that and find out, you know, which one does influence the water table more. And what they found out is up in the mountains in the conifer forest, it's really both. The summer rains and the winter snow gets into the water table a lot faster. As you move down into the pinon juniper country, neither one of them really influence it. It takes a long time for that water to get into the water table in that region. So it's in the higher country with the conifer forest that it really makes a huge difference for our water table. They finished that. They had a little over $1 million legislative grant that they did that study with. And we're using that information as far as tree thinning, brush management, you know, what sides of the slopes. That's the other thing they looked at. South-facing slope, north-facing slope, which influences it more. Everybody knows that south-facing slope is warmer and drier than the north-facing slope. And so they use that information to help NRCS and to hopefully help Forest Service and anybody, private landowners, on what's the best place to thin to influence springs, to influence your wells. Once they finished that study, there was a big question of, you know, for a lot of years, there's been some erosion in the mountains up here, and everybody's kind of forgotten about it. It's been around for our generation, and older generation kind of forget about it. And you don't really think too much about it, but you know, it's kind of an eyesore. It's really influenced the hydrology of everybody's place, everybody's homes, everything that, you know, before the erosion happened, before you created gullies, there was overland flow. You got extra water. You got the rainwater, but the water that flowed across the land also helped grow grass, trees, and when you start channelizing all of that, that completely influences the amount of water that you get. And so they wanted the conservation district down there wanted to look at and see what we can do about trying to help some of these gullies that have formed. So what we have in the Sacramento Mountains, Otero County, Chavez County, and Lincoln County make up Sacramento Mountains. I kind of geared this towards Otero County because that's where we're at, but just to give a little overview, we have James Canyon, Cox Canyon, and Rio Penasco. Up at the top, up here, is Cloudcroft. And our district said, let's look at these three canyons and see just how bad this is. And so they took 105 of these small canyons is what make up these three major canyons. Each one of these, James Canyon itself is a watershed. I guess I'd back up and make sure everybody knows what a watershed is. It's from the top of the mountains, top of whatever. You know, I guess basically it boils down to the top of your head's a watershed. You go outside, training, your head sheds water. Your house is a watershed off the roof. Hopefully, if it goes inside, it's not a very good watershed. But so, James Canyon, Cox Canyon, and Rio Penasco, down from Cloudcroft, is what they asked us to look at to say, you know, just how bad is the erosion problem, and what's it going to take to fix something like that. And as Leslie and I have gone through and kind of done some work looking at it, and done some research and looked around, I could probably spend my career, my kids could spend their career, who knows, probably just fixing these three canyons. So as we go through this, it's going to take everybody on their home, ranch, whatever, on the forest to start working on some of this. In James Canyon, there's 31 individual canyons. Cox Canyon, 25 canyons. And Rio Penasco has 51. And so all the small canyons that go in the hole make up these watersheds. The biggest problem is we're starting to get some of these massive head cuts. And what a head cut is, this is a start here. This is what the native elevation of the land is. And as the water flows through the channel, it starts cutting. It gets even deeper. Where the water used to spread out before all the way across here, that soaked into the grass and soaked into the ground, now it gets all channelized and gets a head developed on it, and it goes fast and just keeps cutting, and it starts affecting things downstream. Some of the ones we looked at, you can see it's real steep on the side and a little over 15 feet deep. That affects wildlife movement, that affects people movement, it affects water movement, and it's something that it's real important that we ought to be looking at. Some more examples here. This is a little further down James Canyon here. The forest just recently put in a new bridge that goes on across the trail, and from that bridge it's, you know, a little over 14 feet deep. Some of the things in the past down James Canyon, some people have tried to do things. Just up from this, it's that real steep sidewalls that you can't climb out of. They've taken a bulldozer in there and they've sloped the sides. You know, 2 to 1, 2 foot for every 2 feet going out, it rises 1 foot. Dirt naturally falls at 1.5 to 1, so that's what Mother Nature tries to get it at. Or for livestock, for wildlife, to make it easier for them, you know, not anything really less than 2 to 1. This is just up from Mayhill. I don't know if I should have brought a little pointer or something, but just up here is a major head cut here. This is, it's working towards, that's Mayhill's water supply. That's a well there that feeds Mayhill, and it's been like that for a lot of years, so I don't know if anything eventually ever is going to happen. But there's definitely a chance that if it keeps cutting down through there, that Mayhill could lose their well. This is right at Mayhill, the bridge that goes from where Cox Canyon and James Canyon meet, well, and even Rio Penasco, where they all meet and come together right here at Mayhill. You can see there was a big flow last September. I don't know if you remember Mayhill and Cloud Crop area got about 8 to 10 inches of rain in about a 48-hour period last September, and they had a huge flow. In fact, it almost got to the top of the bridge. This is the head of Cox Canyon. Everything above up here, nothing's affected it yet, but this head cut is here, is trying to work its way to the top. I don't know, it's not on the slide here, but I don't know if everybody in here remembers Hurricane Dolly that we had. If you've been on the Tularosa Basin side of Sierra Blanca and the mountains going up from the Tularosa Basin to the top, from Three Rivers, there was an erosion head cut that was about halfway up Sierra Blanca. It's not Sierra Blanca, whatever the mountain is on this side here, but it's going towards Sierra Blanca. It was about halfway up. Hurricane Dolly finished it off. That cut now goes all the way to the top. It actually tops out whatever that highest, it's not Sierra Blanca, whatever the next peak is over. It actually topped out. There's a cut goes from the bottom all the way to the top. The hydrology of that mountain chain will never be the same. These are just some pictures of what's happening. This is a good one. That slide before shows it's kind of leveled off, but there's actually a new little channel that's starting. It's starting to cut inside the main channel. This was a fire. This was the Penasco fire, which was in 92, I think, 92 or 93. And following this fire here, we had a big rain, all the sediment came down the side into a side canyon. It actually did some good on its own. It actually formed a dam here, and you can see from this dam here, the sediment that's almost level to the top of this dam is now all the way back to here. So everything that's coming down this main canyon is getting stopped by a dam that was caused after a fire. This cut here is probably close to 100 feet. These are piled logs. Those logs there probably are 40 to 50 feet long. And there's just a huge pile of them that someone's trying to put down in that canyon. Yeah, this was the good one right here. It was starting to heal, and then we've had some kind of event in the past that's creating another channel in the middle. This here is Cox Canyon, which is going, actually this is Wills Canyon, which is in Cox Canyon, and just how deep it is. And a lot of these would happen, these were formed probably in homestead times. These are probably old wagon roads, probably old trails, and you can see where the road is. You know, the original road was probably right there, and as the water came down the tracks, started cutting these. This is Curtis Canyon Dam. This was built in 1957 following a 1951 fire. This was put in by what was then the SCS, Soil Conservation Service, which is now the NRCS, to do exactly what we're looking for. And this here is probably 50 to 70 feet tall, and you can see the sediment that it's caught in here from the upper canyon. And these are pictures upstream of the canyon. You know, with Curtis Canyon Dam's down here, looking up the canyon, what it's doing here. Then Rio Penasco. The thing about most of these canyons is that along the canyon itself is mostly private land. Once you get a certain way up the canyon, it all goes to forest. So when you're working on erosion control, the best place to start is you want to start small, and that way if the water that comes behind it, you're working just on small. But if at the bottom of the canyon where the private land's at, which NRCS works with, if you start something small and you have a huge rush of water coming, no matter what you put in there, it doesn't really help a whole lot. So as you work up the canyon, it's mostly forest lands. We have one canyon, which is Wills Canyon over there, that the whole upper end of the watershed is private land. And then with the second canyon, that's when our board asked us, as we do things, let's start with private land on the top of one canyon, which is the Coleman Ranch, and work our way down. And let's pick another canyon that's fairly comparable that has forest at the top and get their help and work our way down so that we can show people that we can work with the Forest Service, we can work with private individuals in our agency to see what we can't do. And so that's the comparison that we have in these two canyons. Just some more pictures of what the channel looks like. Now, I'm not saying that none of these erosion problems happened or were there before, but the biggest one, in September of 1941, they had over 20 inches of rain in about a 48-hour period. You talk to a lot of the old-timers that grew up around here and can remember 1941. A lot of them talked about this event, and a lot of them talked about the pictures that we showed you before of Cox Canyon, James Canyon, and Rio Penasco, say that most of these cuts started from that 1941 time frame. These are pictures that actually came out of Rio Doso and from Cloudcroft of this flood event that happened that, you know, a lot of it looks kind of like what happened in 2008 during the Hurricane Dolly, which also caused these channels to keep cutting. This is another picture from that 41 flood, and just the amount of sediment that came out of there. What we're proposing is, along these channels, like I said, is to start small, and it's, you know, fairly simple. It's a lot of these places have trees on it, but trees, some of them have died, and you have that resource. So using log structures, a roll of wire, mesh wire, comes in 330-foot rolls. You can make a lot of dams. Most of these channels are 25, 30 feet wide, something like that. And you can cut that wire, comes in 4-foot tall pieces. You can cut that in half. You don't really want to build anything taller than 2 foot. You get any higher than that, you get a big flow, it just lays them over. So the shorter that you can make them, the better they are. But using things that you have right there on your place. If you have a lot of brush and you want to do some thinning, put that brush in the channel and make sure you tie it in with some kind of wire, with T-posts, with some stakes. And, you know, we had a presentation to the forest permittees in Cloudcroft to show them, you know, here's some of the things that you can do. And, you know, just a woven wire dam to do a little bit more difficult. You can have rock and wire baskets to just using rock, the wire to hold the banks. This one right here is there's another canyon that comes in, and so to keep it cutting twice, using rock, but you got to hold it in with wire. That's the biggest thing, is that you can do a lot of things, but if you unless you tie it in, hold it down, it's not going to last very long. You're just using brush dams, find some stakes, and or even, you know, with a backhoe, with a sledgehammer, whatever, pounding those in, pile brush behind it. The biggest thing is tying it in to hold the sediment in place. That's the picture right there of those logs again. That canyon's huge. So you're going to have to start small, and that's why I said in my career, my kids' career, probably theirs, it's just going to take a long time building it at 2 feet at a time, but it'd take millions, probably billions of dollars to bring enough dirt in to completely fill it again. So let's let nature help us by let her bring the sediment in, and then we'll just keep building some fences. Just piling rocks. There's tarps to keep it from cutting as you're building a dam. This is on top of a dam here, and this is the spillway itself is right over the top of the dam, so allowed to keep it from cutting. You know, they have a fabric, a woven fabric to keep the soil in place. This was another picture after that Penasco fire of what the Forest Service did. This is their spillway coming off of a sediment dam or sediment pond, and it's to keep their spillway from cutting. Some of the thing over the years is that, you know, it's kind of between the wind, elk damage, and just over the years, some of them are kind of falling apart and need to go back and have some maintenance done to them. These are the log structure I was telling you about. It worked really well. It's really simple. Just make sure you got to tie them into both sides here, and all you're really out is your labor. Some other examples, and there's a couple, you know, as you build more sediment, you put more logs on top of it, and then even going back in between, moving up, you know, 50 feet above it to go and put the next one. These are just some simple ideas how to put them in. You can really see how this one's working right here. From, here's the ground level, and you can see on the top end of how much it's caught. It's probably built up 2-3 feet. There's a picture right there. On these structures here, we kind of just really got started on this project, and yeah, we just really kind of got started on this project, and we're just looking for some, not really support, but we're looking for people that just let them know that, yeah, you have these erosion problems, and not a lot of people really stop and think about it. A lot of people I work with, they've grown up on their ranch, they've grown up on their farm, and I know one guy who's been there all his entire life, who's probably in his 70s, and he's got juniper trees that are taller than he is, and you can't even see through them. And he said he woke up one day, probably about 10 years ago, and all of a sudden asked himself, where'd this brush come from? He grew up with it, you see it every day, and all of a sudden you don't really realize that it's there. And that's kind of about the same thing with this. That brush, I used to be able to see my brother and sister coming home from school, and now I can't see 10 feet out there. Well, I used to be able to walk across this pasture, but now I can't because I have a 30-foot deep arroyo right there, and I can't even jump to the other side. Elk and deer can't move to the other side. My grandma and grandpa used to say that, we had elk in the front yard, but now we don't anymore. Well, is that because of that 30-foot deep arroyo? And so we're just looking for, really awareness that, there are things we can do, and you're probably not going to fix it overnight because it really didn't happen overnight. But there's steps that you can take with the structures that we've talked about to start building it back up. And over time, you will. You can do something about it to get it to build back up again. That's really what I have.
Y'all have any questions for John?
Why is it different now than it was, say, 200 years ago?
Well, was it really that different, or is there things that we've done, like with the roads, that type of thing? We've kind of channelized things. One of the worst things that probably ever happened, to what we've done to the landscape is probably roads and railroads. You look at all the bridges and everything, that water used to flow across the landscape wherever it wanted to. Now we've channelized everything to go across roads and railroads at certain points where we can build bridges, culverts, and that type of thing. So that's a lot of the things that we've done have affected the landscape probably the most.
I don't know if you can answer this question, but back in April, the EPA and the Army Corps of Engineers set forth a proposal saying that they basically wanted to expand their boundaries and the way that they handle things, saying that private landowners now might be subject to permits for like watersheds like they're talking about, arroyos, potential puddles, that's all going to fall under their jurisdiction. They're hoping sometime in the future, which I don't agree with, but how do you create and minimize some of these erosion difficulties without incurring the wrath of the EPA and getting fined thousands of dollars later down the road?
And that's something we have to look into. But a lot of these things, I know one of the biggest ones with our state engineer is that, for their permit process, is that in the structures that you build, if you're impounding water, you have to have a permit. Really, none of these structures are impounding water. The only thing we're looking at impounding is the sediment. The water can go on. We want to keep the dirt where it is. So as that comes forward, that is a good question on what we do in those channels. There's very few. Lincoln County is one of them that has the Rio Ruidoso, the Rio Hondo. That really has very much live water. The Rio Penasco flows. Most everything is intermittent streams. It's usually coming from rain. So as far as streams and rivers of the United States for that water, we're not really affecting that. But the structures that we put inside of them, I think if we stay with the rock and wire, the brush dams, the logs and all that, we're not really impounding any water. I think the stuff that we do here will be okay. But that is a good question we need to ask as that goes forward.
Well, more specifically, what she's talked about is not a water impoundment, but the navigable waters and 404 permit. They're expanding the scope of that to include a lot of intermittent and ephemeral streams, which for the kind of work that we did.
In case of the